Okay, so this will be very quick and very cheap or dirty way to debug a Flask application. I know that there is lots of other possibilities and lots of other libraries, but I just would like to test this one because I would like to try it if it's possible, or maybe there is some underlying processes which hinders this kind of very cheap, very poor, and very dirty debugging. So yeah, of course I have a Flask application which, if I uncomment this line, which basically just provide a hello world server. And if I go to, for example, it's not, yeah, so this one, and I run it, and it will be get back for me with this message, just to be sure that it's working. I think it was 500. Yeah, this one. And yeah, so it's working. And of course, it is very simple, and you cannot execute everything from the web browser because you cannot set up the underlying data structures and so on and so forth. But this is working, and if I shut it down and just uncomment this line, which is just basically a PDB call, set trace call to PDB, and I rerun it. Yeah, it will try it again, and if I rerun this, it will spinning indefinitely, since in this window I get a PDB prompt, so I am able to use PDB as usual, and I'm able to continue it, and it will process my request and continue in its merry ways. And yeah, okay, so this is one thing. And the other thing is, let me shut down it, because these type of very cheap and very dirty scenarios may be worth to use it. I am not sure, but maybe worth to use it when you didn't have access to IDE you run behind some very cryptic and very elaborated Docker installations or so on and so forth. Or you don't have to set up remote debugger sessions and everything else, but you would like to just quickly check how it's your API working or not working, or what is it doing. So anyway, so this is in this case, let me just start a PowerShell in this folder, and I just entered the virtual environment, and of course I am able to execute the same server. And if I go back to my web browser, so I didn't use the PyCharm interface, just the web browser, I'm able to rerun this, and then its PDB is called again. So, and then somewhere I am able to execute anything, and I'm able to continue. The only shortcoming of this kind of debugging, I didn't even try to call it debugging, but it's somehow debugging. There is two major shortcomings. One, that you have to prepare everything, so there is no support how you create the data and the data structures, the input data, the validations and everything. So you have to create everything. You can of course create some small scripts which are able to use request library to call this. And yes, I know there is tons of library which already do it. For example, the Swagger or the OpenAPI standards, which can be installed into Flask with some plugins. I don't have to try it on, but yeah, it's possible. And then you can use that the Swagger UI, the Swagger Web UI to get some kind of support. But anyway, you have to create the input data. Yeah, it's true. And the other thing, if you it takes too much time to debug and you stay too long in this active PDB session, it may be killed by the underlying Flask API app because there is some timeout. I don't know what is the default timeout value. It's maybe killed either by the Flask app or by the browser itself. So there is two type of timeouts here. One is in the Flask app, which is already set to a certain time. How long does it willing to wait until routing is done? And of course, there is another timeout in the browser itself or in the client itself. How long does it willing to wait until the server responds? So yeah, it can be annoying, but it can be done. Not the best way, but definitely the cheapest way. If you would like to step up a little further, you can use a thing like this Postman. Yeah, I think Postman is a well-known tool for debugging. I used it several years ago. Right now it's only the web API which is working, but you are able to click here and download the desktop agent. And if you download the desktop agent, and it's basically just starting an executable file, so you don't have to do anything. And then after you start it, you are able to execute request against your local network because it's tunneling through this agent and then executing it in your local network. Of course, you probably would like to shut down when you don't using it, just for security reasons. Yeah. Okay. So. Okay, so if I press send, as you can see, it's working as expected. So send, and I'm able to continue, and then I'm able to get the results, and I can see it in many ways, and to retrieve it. And anyway, or you can choose other type of requests like post, patch, delete, and anything else. So yeah, it's definitely not the best way to debug a Flask application, but it's basically the cheapest way, I think. Yeah. So again, the code is here. This is very simple. I don't know if this debug true does anything in this context. I set it true because it seems to be logical. Yep. And of course, if your application use heavily on parallel requests or parallel routings, then it's maybe a pain in the ass to debug something which always basically breaked by the set trace things. But on the other way, you always able to disable the parallelism, and yeah, your application will be slower, but at least you will be able to debug it. Yeah, and in the case when you use anything else, some Swagger UI or something else, you also have to create the inputs because the Swagger UI cannot create your vulnerable or error-prone inputs. You have to somehow combine the things to create the inputs because you only able to debug a server if the server is running and it's responsive. If you cannot run the piece of code which you would like to debug, then you aren't able to debug it. Yeah, so again, Poorman Flask debugging.